Hey friends, it has been a while, but I am back with another misidentification video. Today we're going to be talking about Enneagram 1 versus Enneagram 5. And I love this misidentification because if you follow me on Instagram at all, you may have seen a story that I did on this, which is who is the true minimalist here. So I think everyone assumes Enneagram 1 is, but I had a conversation with someone and then also a comment here on YouTube about basically 5 being the true minimalist. So that really spawns this conversation of like, what are the differences between 1 and 5? And I think a lot of people fall into this boat when trying to determine if they are a 1 or a 5. So let's get straight into it. One of the main differences between 1 and 5 is that gut and head difference. So a lot of Enneagram 1s tend to convince themselves that they're head types. This is something that I've read. This is something that I've also observed a lot in real life in just sitting across coffee shop tables from people and talking with ones. A lot of them really see themselves as head types because they are very heavy analytical people, heavy philosophical people. But the motives from that really, when those people have sat down and done the work, they come back realizing, okay, this is much more of a feelings, honestly, gut-based, instinctive sort of sentiment that causes me to philosophize, that causes me to go into analytical mode. 5, on the other hand, is a true head type and really shares those analytical traits, but really from that different place. So when we look at those differences between 1 and 5, a lot of the way that manifests in the person is that ones tend to be more outwardly passionate, and their passion of choice is anger. So I think that a lot of times that makes people perceive ones as cold or removed, but actually there's a lot of passion going on there. It tends to be fiery, but passionate is. 5 on the other side tends to be dispassionate. 5s tend to be much more dry, much more to the point. They don't tend to rise to anger very quickly. Their modes of that look more like frustration or sarcasm. They tend to just have that more dispassionate demeanor. So that is a sort of way that those traits manifest. Another difference between 5 and 1 that we can see really well is from the standpoint of order and chaos. So, or order and scatteredness, I'll say. 1 tends to be much more orderly, 5 tends to be more naturally scattered. We see this when we even look at integration and disintegration, which is really interesting for these types because both 1 and 5 have a connection to 7. But for one of them, it's healthy, and for one of them, it's stress. So Enneagram 1 integrates to 7. So 1s are very regimented and rigid with the self because of that inner voice, that inner judge sometimes we read, that's constantly criticizing the self and then turning that outward to criticize the world and others. Because of that, 1s tend to be very regimented, more structured people. They tend to feel anxious or frustrated if things don't have order or if things aren't moving forward. 5, on the other hand, is much more of a, because of that head type situation, 5s tend to be much more ideators and living in the head. 1s like action. 5s really struggle with action. So 5s tend to be a little bit more scattered because they are just so much in their head and often not as much in practical life that they can disintegrate to 7, as we see in that health pattern, and get their fingers in way too many pots and just be like, this idea, this concept, this theory, and really find themselves very scattered and making no progress. This is also why 5 integrates to 8 in action. So 8 is our most action-oriented type. And when 5 integrates to 8, we see that come out of the head and into the body. And 5s being able to realize some of those ideas or theories or concepts. 1, on the other hand, is naturally very action-oriented. And what we see in the Enneagram with like natural traits, or what you would say like average health traits, tend to borderline on unhealthy. So that's like, for 1, that action orientation can be okay, but when it's idolized or when it's fixated on and like things must be moving forward because it's right, that can be problematic. For ones to where that action orientation is actually kind of negative for them at times. Action orientation for a 5, on the other hand, is almost always positive because 5s really struggle with sandbagging themselves and theorizing and getting stuck there, that when they do choose action, it's almost always a healthy thing. So as I always say, the health patterns really, really indicate type. Another thing that I wanted to expand a little bit more on is that minimalist question when it comes to 1 and 5. I think that in sort of like kindred nature with that action piece that we just talked about, the minimalism for 1s and 5s looks very different. So with 1s, minimalism is much more about structure and order and for things to be right or things to be in the right place type of situation. For 5s, that minimalist piece tends to look more like, that dispassionate nature, the nature to draw firm boundaries around time because they have limited energy stores. And that's a huge difference too. 1s tend to have high energy and can wear themselves out for a cause. 5s, on the other hand, will draw thick boundaries and say, nope, this is all I'm capable of. Stop asking me. There's that much more self-focused, or I guess what feels SP about 5. 1, on the other hand, unless the person in question is an SP1, doesn't feel that way as much. So I would say these are some of the main differences when we look at 5 and 1 when it comes to misidentification, but also when it comes to just seeing the differences between types. There's so much value, friends, in learning about all of the Enneagram types. I feel like with the trend in our culture right now with Enneagram is really to just like learn your own type and fixate on it and make memes about it, and like all that's well and good, but we really need to learn the whole Enneagram so that we can use this as a tool with our friends and family and with people in our lives, and developing compassion for different struggles, being able to understand where people are coming from. So if you have any questions about 1 or 5 and what the difference is, feel free to leave it in the comments or to shoot me an email. I'll see you guys next time with another misidentification video.